Disclaimer: the videos you're about to watch are not mine. Recognition will be in the description below. Now sit back, turn out the lights, and get ready to get spooky.
Okay, I have a ghost story to tell you. I'm in a new hospital and I was walking around and it's empty and it's kind of creepy, and I heard some noises and I started thinking about all the different ghost stories that I have from years of working in ICU. But the creepiest story that I have, sorry about that noise, it's loud but I can't turn it off. The creepiest story that I have. So I worked in a hospital that the unit that I worked on had never been anything but a cardiovascular ICU, or cardiothoracic. It was hearts and lungs and heart transplants, total artificial heart, lung transplants, anything cardiac related. So on this floor, there was a patient that we had one time. There was a particular room that kind of gave you the heebie-jeebies when you walk past it. And we had a patient in that room that he was not a nice human. He was somebody that I had actually known outside of the hospital, so I never took care of him because it was a conflict of interest. But one night he was confused, so he was just saying kind of mean, hateful things. But one of the things that he kept saying is he kept using a racial slur, the N-word, and he kept saying, "Get that little racial slur out of here. He's playing in here. Get him out of here. I don't want that little racial slur in my room." And everybody, this man, I didn't like him outside of the hospital and as a patient, and when he's confused, and it was not good. But anyway, he ended up leaving that room, got better, left. And then when you're in the hospital, you can get confused, and it's very normal for you to hallucinate. You have medications on board, that's just kind of a normal thing. It just kind of, sometimes your true colors show up whenever you are on medications. I've had women punch me that, their family members say oh, they're so sweet and kind, but then they get on, medications, and then they are, hitting and kicking. And anyway, anesthesia can do that to you, as well as medications, and, even your sodium gets off, there's all sorts of things that can influence you. So we didn't think much of it. I think it was 2 days later, not just a couple days later, we had the sweetest little old lady in that room, and I did take care of her. She was adorable. I swear I can't remember, she was in her late 80s, but she was so sweet and so cute, poor lady. But she was not confused, and she kept telling me, she was like, "Can you get my purse for me? Give me my purse. I really need my purse. It's over there." And I was like, What do you need your purse for?" And a lot of times we don't give patients their belongings, because there might be extra pills in there and we got to know what they're taking. So I said, "Well, let me help you go through your purse, and what is it that you want out of there?" She says, "I have some candy in there. I really want to get some candy for that little boy. He keeps coming in here and playing, and I have some candy that I'd like to give him." And I said, "What, there's no little boy? And she says, "Yes, there's a little black boy. He keeps playing over there in the drawers, and he's looking for some food, but I have some candy, and I'd like to give it to him." This unit had never been a pediatric unit. There was never children. There wasn't any children on the unit, and nobody was visiting, especially no children. It's pretty creepy.
I wonder if the hospital was built on an old plantation site, or if something traumatic happened to that little boy. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Meanwhile, let's check out the next video.
I got an email from a nurse who we're just going to call Danny to tell me about her supernatural experience while working night shift in the hospital. She said that currently she works in the ER, but this story actually took place when she was working in labor and delivery. And I'm not sure how to pronounce it, but she said she was working on the floor where moms are on bed rest, and she would work night shift. The night that this story takes place, Danny knows she doesn't have many patients on the floor, and it's only going to be her working. But even though she's going to be by herself, she doesn't feel scared because she knows it's very secure. If anyone wants to come in, she's going to have to buzz them in, or if they're going to get in through the doors, they're going to need a special key card. Danny told me that she gets her patients tucked in for the night, makes sure that everyone is comfortable, and then everyone drifts off to sleep. She told me that when she worked night shift, she would bring a book with her, so she was settling in just to read for like the next 8 hours. As she's sitting at the nurse's station, call light starts to go off, but it's for room 17, and she knows there's no one in room 17. She gets up, she walks to room 17, she looks around, it's pitch dark, there is definitely no one in there. She goes to the call light and she shuts it off. While she did think that that was odd, she was just like, maybe just like a malfunction, it happens. Goes back to the nurse's station, starts to read again. When she starts reading again, she hears a TV blaring and she realizes it's coming from room 17. So she walks back to room 17, looks around, still dark, definitely no one in there, shuts the TV off. Once again, this really doesn't scare her. She is coming up with logical explanations for what is happening. She's thinking maybe there's just like something wrong with the electrical in that room. I don't know. But she looks around, makes sure that everything is shut off, and then goes back to the nurse's station and starts to read again. Just a few minutes later, as she's reading, she hears someone running down the hallway. She says it sounds like someone when they're running very quickly in bare feet, but like a kid, like a toddler. She puts her book down, she gets up, she goes, she looks around, nothing is there. She goes to read again. Same thing happens again. She is hearing someone running down the hallway. Puts her book down, goes to look, nothing. At this point, she is starting to feel uneasy, so she calls down to the labor and delivery floor and asks them to send someone up because she wants to go and talk to her charge nurse and let her know kind of what's going on and what is happening. I don't know. So they send someone up, and Danny is like, hey, thanks for coming. I'm going to talk to the charge nurse. Like, I'll be right back. I just need a few minutes. As Danny starts to head down the hallway, she glances into a room and she realizes that what she is seeing is a woman standing in that room, like outside the window. But Danny's thinking, I'm on the 3rd floor and there is no way that someone is standing outside that window. And she says she was walking by so fast that she almost missed it, but when she saw it, she was like, hold on, and she backed up. As she was registering what she was looking at, and she could make out details, she could see this woman. She could see that she was wearing a green dress. As she's standing there trying to figure out how this woman is hovering outside of this 3rd-story window, she realizes it's a reflection, and this woman is standing behind me. So Danny says she whips around, there's nothing there. At this point, she is booking it to the charge nurse's office. She gets there, she's talking to the charge nurse, and she's like, I don't really know what is going on. The charge nurse looks at her and she says, the way that I'm going to answer you is going to depend on how you answer one question. And Danny is like, what? And the charge nurse asks her, do you believe in ghosts? And Danny said, yeah, I guess so. Why not? So the charge nurse goes on to tell Danny that the floor that she is working on and this unit that she is working on is haunted. Now at this point, Danny has not given the charge nurse the description of the woman that she saw in the reflection of the window. The charge nurse asks Danny, have you seen the woman in the green dress yet? I'm going to tell you what, Danny is better than me because she is still a nurse. And at that point, I would have been putting him at 2 weeks, switching careers. I'm going to go be an accountant. I'm going to be an arborist. But the charge nurse tells Danny that on that floor, they have their resident spirits and sometimes spirits that are just passing through. Where that actual unit is located is right above the morgue. The charge nurse told her that over the years, there have been reports of hearing footsteps, weird things happening in certain rooms, the woman in the green dress, and even screaming being heard. After Danny gets this explanation and realizes what is happening, she goes back to work like nothing happened. The rest of the night goes on uneventful. She does end up staying and working in this unit for quite some time before switching to emergency room. And she said that she just shifted the way she did things. She would keep like TV shows on. Whenever she was doing something, she would talk out loud, like letting the spirits know what she was doing. And they never bothered her after this. She did tell me that was her creepy experience working in labor and delivery, but she has more from the emergency department. If we would like to hear those, I emailed her back and I said, yes, obviously, please. We would love to hear them. As always, thank you guys so much for listening. I hope that everyone has a wonderful day.
Oh my God. After hearing this story, whenever I go visit anyone in the hospital, I'm not looking in any rooms walking down the hall. Have any of you ever seen anything weird at a hospital? Let me know in the comments. Now, let's get ready for the last video.
If you're wondering if there's life after death, absolutely. So I used to be a hospice nurse and I worked the night shift, 7P to 7A. That night I had a husband and a wife as patients. They were both in isolation rooms. Each one had their own room because each one had different infectious diseases. So I go in to check on the female and I'm talking to her and I notice her vitals are, going down. So I was talking to her and she said, I'm in pain. I said, do you want me to give you something for pain? And she said, yes. And on my way out, she said, hey, thank you for everything that you're doing. And I said, no problem. So I go up to the nurse's station. I tell them, hey, you might want to contact the family because she's, declining. And they said also the husband, he's showing irregular heartbeats. And I said, okay. They were both DNRs, which means do not resuscitate. So if something happens to them, we have to let them pass. So I walk all the way back to the med cart. I'm getting her medication ready. All of a sudden, she's standing next to me. And I told her, what are you doing here, Mrs. So-and-so? And she says, I need for you to go check on my husband right now. And I said, okay, I'll do that. Let me medicate you first. She said, no, I need to see him, but I can't unless I'm with you. And I looked at her and I said, well, okay. So we go into his isolation room, and there's a little room that you go into before you go into the actual patient's room, because you have to get, dressed medically. So we walked into the patient's room, and she's standing next to me the whole time, and I'm feeling like this electricity, and my skin is just, the hair is rising up, and, he looks at her and he goes, I'm so glad you came, honey. She said, grab my hand, and she said, come on, let's go. And I said, what do you mean, let's go? Where are you going? So he sits up. Next thing I know, they're grabbing hands. All of a sudden, he falls back into the bed, and I turn to look, and she's gone. And so then I get a knock on the door, and they're like, hey, he just passed, and also the wife just passed. And I'm sitting there going, okay. So I go back to the wife's room, and, she's expired. And I'm like, this is really, really bizarre. And I didn't say anything. So we decided that we were going to put them together so that when the family came in, they could say their proper goodbyes. So we put them together in the room. And as I'm doing that, I'm in there by myself. The female just shows up out of the blue. And at this point, I already know that this is something paranormal. And she said, he won't come with me. And I'm like, what do you mean he won't come with you? And she's like, no, he won't come with me. At that point, the kids walk in and they start crying, and I'm backing up against the wall because, I don't want to get in the way. So then as I'm walking out of the room, the bathroom door starts to open, and I see the man standing there. And he's still wearing his hospital gown, and he looks out, through the door, and he says, okay, they're here. I can go now. And I hear the wife laughing in the background, and then the bathroom kind of lit up, and then they were gone. That just blew my mind.
Let's hope the last story we see our loved ones after. I hope you enjoyed these stories, and don't forget to like and subscribe for future videos. This is Creep Archive signing out.